Yay, it says we are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Leah, and I'm here today with Lauren Callahan.
Hi,
Um,
everybody.
and we are getting ready to talk all about oh, good, we're live. Yay, it says we are live. We are about to talk about some um, evidence-based practices and things that you can do to help your kids when you are working from home and using play and structure to really benefit you. So I am going to post this into our Facebook group for those of you who signed up, and then we're going to dive right into it. Lauren, how are you today? Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm good, thanks.
Yay, I know it should be super fun. We will be sharing a screen today. So that means that you can see some slides. And then if you want them afterwards, I will link them in the comments so you can download it. So don't worry whether or not you're taking notes or any of that good stuff. We will share that resource with you. Okay, great. So I am going to share my screen and then we'll just jump into it. So here we go. And come here. Is it going to let me do that? There we go. Share screen. Great. Okay. Fabulous. While we're doing this, Lauren, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am the extended assessment supervisor and a PCIT clinical supervisor at Child Guidance. We're mostly going to cover things about PCIT today, which stands for Parent-Child Interaction Therapy, which is a coaching model when done in the office. In telehealth, we're doing it through the computer. It's been highly successful both ways. So today what we're mostly doing is just taking some skills that we use in treatment, teaching you how you can use it on your own at home. And as Leah suggested, we're mostly focusing on how to help your kids become more independent, especially when you're working or just trying to do your laundry or get a minute alone, and how you can use these skills in a really effective way in order to get those little bits of time alone. Okay, so special time is a PCIT idea, and what it refers to is having 5 minutes of uninterrupted time with your child that is very positive. So, what does having 5 minutes alone do for your child? It does a lot, even though it's a very short amount of time. It's harder to fit in your schedule than you might think. So, having that small expectation for yourself is much more doable than 10 or 15 minutes every day. So 5 minutes of special time with your child. You'll sit down, you'll have some toys available, you'll let them know it's your special time with you. And then this is the kind of things that you'll be working on or the skills that we'll review today. So what does it do for your child? It induces feelings of safety and calmness. It helps you manage your child's behavior with only using your attention and specifically your positive attention. It teaches your child how to communicate in a more effective way, how to focus, how to concentrate. It helps you teach your child things without it being frustrating for either one of you. It can improve a child's self esteem. And it also covers a lot of play skills that lead into helping your child make friends with other kids. So, how to share, how to take turns, how to be patient. Okay, so how would you do this? So, in order to start your special time practice, you would pick a date and a time and you would get a timer and you'd set it for 5 minutes. Like I said earlier, you would let your child know that it's special time just for the two of you and that you can play with anything that the child chooses. I will precaution if your child has a million ideas and is one of those action packed kiddos, it might be helpful for you to pick some toys that you like and do it in a more directive way. So it's special time, and here are the toys that you can play with. And here are the basic rules. So you are going to be a play therapist. So we're adding a hat to your collection. You're putting on your play therapist hat, and you're just going to follow the lead of your child. So if your child is playing with blocks, you'll also play with blocks, and you'll just play with the blocks in the way that your child is. So a specific example would be if the child is building them into a tower, then you would either build a tower also, or you would join in with their tower. So there are some things that you don't want to do during this special time, and these are our avoidant or our don't skills, which are you're going to avoid asking questions, you're going to avoid giving commands, and you're also going to avoid using negative talk or criticism. The most Oftentimes, when parents use criticism without meaning to is when you're teaching. So, for example, if you were having them draw their letters and they drew one incorrectly, you might, even if you mean to do it gently, say, up, that's wrong, or try it this way. And that can feel critical to them. So, for your special time, you'll avoid teaching lessons altogether. Asking questions is very hard not to do. And a lot of people have the question, why can't I? So just to cover that, so it is a developmentally appropriate thing to do throughout the day. It's good to be curious about what your child's doing and thinking. It's great to ask questions to get that information. The reason specifically in your special time why you won't do that is just because it can be a little interrupting, and it can sort of shift it away from being your child's ability to lead with you asking so many questions about the information. So I've told you all these things not to do. So what should you do? These are the do skills. So we are going to go one by one. For now, we'll just say that the acronym is PRIDE, which stands for praise, reflect, imitate, describe, and enjoy. Okay, so like I said, we're going to do the skills one by one. So the first skill is praise. This is by far the most effective skill and the one that should be concentrated on the most. So in PCIT, we are talking about specific labeled praises. So praises like good, awesome, nice job, thank you, great job. They're all wonderful things to say, and they definitely help boost your child's self-esteem. But what they don't do is give specific enough feedback for your child to repeat again what you liked. So the goal of using labeled praises is to be as specific as possible and to give that praise as close to that positive behavior as possible so that your child knows exactly what you liked, why you liked it, and how to do it again. Label praises help your child to feel noticed and appreciated, and really they start to feel proud of themselves for doing it, and then eventually they start to do it on purpose because they want to keep that attention from you. So children believe what you tell them. This is how self-esteem is built, hearing these positive messages and starting to integrate it into what they do every day. So specific praise helps them understand what they need to do to go through a day filled with positivity and success. So the more frequently you notice these behaviors, label them, and especially build your enthusiasm towards them, the more you're going to see your child doing those behaviors. In your 5 minutes of special time practice, the trick is to try to do at least one labeled praise every 30 seconds, which is quite often and does feel like a lot of work, but the work pays off. So what do labeled praises sound like? So some specifics are, thank you for sitting so calmly. I love it when you share. You're doing a great job focusing on your coloring. And later on in the presentation, we're going to give you some good labeled praises for things that have to do with needing time alone, but I'll just give you a couple right now. So thanks for spending your time so that mommy could do her work. Thank you for being an explorer with your toys while I was folding the laundry. Thanks for taking a turn playing while your sister used your favorite toy. Okay, so the second skill in the PRIDE skills is reflect. So a reflection, is similar to a repetition or a paraphrase of what your child says. The key thing here, especially if inappropriate language is something that you're working on, is you're only reflecting appropriate talk. So when a child talks and it was appropriate, you say it back in a way that helps a child lead. So I'll give you an example. Mommy, I built a tower. Oh, you did build a tower. The more enthusiasm, the better. Another one would be, Mommy, I drew a circle, and you say a circle. So it doesn't always have to be word for word what your child says. Sometimes with our chatty kiddos and they're talking a mile a minute, we're not able to reflect everything, but you can pick one word or a few words, be really emphatic about it, and just say it back to them to help them know that you're listening and you're paying attention and you're following along with what they're doing. Okay, our third skill is imitate. Hopefully this one is not too hard, but sometimes playing can be really challenging. So imitation speaks to doing what your child is doing. So as long as your child is playing appropriately, you should be imitating, following along with what they're doing. So the biggest thing here is to remember that when you're doing your special time, you also are an active play participant. So if your child's playing on the floor, you should be on the floor. If your child is playing with blocks, you should be playing with blocks. box. It helps the child feel aligned with you. Your energy can get on the same page. Your focus is on the same things. And these skills come much more easily when you're engaged together. Okay, and then our fourth skill is describe. So in PCIT, we call these behavior descriptions. And the best way to think about this is if you're watching a football game and you're a sports broadcaster and you're commenting on everything that the player is doing, and then all of a sudden they have a touchdown and you're praising that touchdown. So behavior descriptions are a way for you just to narrate your child's play. And then when your child does something that you'd like to praise, then you would add on a labeled praise. So it could just be a simple, okay, you're coloring at the table. You picked up your red crayon. I see you drawing a star. Now you're drawing a circle. You're just commenting. And then all of a sudden you realize she's been drawing things for a few minutes. I love that you've been focused for a few minutes drawing your picture. Okay, and then the last pride skill is enjoy. So enjoyment obviously shows that you're happy to be doing what you're doing. This is easier said than done, as we know, on days when we're stressed or when we're trying to work from home, or maybe your child's behavior has been driving you nuts all day and having special time does not feel all that fun to you. The key is that if you're wearing this play therapist hat, you are giving a dose of therapy that day. So it's not necessarily thinking of special time as a reward for behavior, but as a way of concentrating your time working on the things that you are working on. So these labeled praises, it's not because they've had a great day, but it's because you want them to turn their day around and listen to what you've said, listen to what your positive attention has been towards, and repeat them for the rest of the day. Okay, so how can you start using this, especially when you're working? So we have gotten a lot of feedback from parents and a lot of questions that children have become increasingly attention seeking, clingy, whiny, all the things that we know, especially our young toddlers can be, especially when they've had your almost undivided attention for 6 months now. So our focus right now is on independent play. So, one key thing to remember is that you have to set your child up for success, especially for younger kids. So, children do not know how to organize their time. They have no sense of structure or organization without you. So, everything you expect from them, you really have to model and put in place for them in order for them to be successful. So, one thing that we're going to talk about is scheduling time. Another thing we're going to talk about is how to get your child to become more and more independent. So, let's just talk about scheduling your time. When you do special time for 5 minutes, that means that your child needs your undivided attention. That does not mean that that 5 minutes should come at a particular day and time, especially not the same time every day. So do not schedule your special time, or do not tell your child you're going to have it if you have a meeting at the same time or if you have a call at the same time. This could look different for every family. Some people know their schedule ahead of time. Others, you're just answering the phone, putting out fires all day. Can look different for everyone. But the key is that you feel structured in your approach. So have your 5 minutes when you know that you can dedicate that time. For the most especially stressed out people, I typically suggest just start with a routine that you would never skip. So if you're not skipping breakfast, if you're not skipping dinner, if you're not skipping tubby time, then maybe you put your 5 minutes around those routines that never change. Another thing to think about is what your child needs from you. So if you are about to go on a work meeting for an hour, something you might think about is, has your child moved around, gotten their energy out, been stimulated before then, before we ask that they are independent and quiet and busy for 20 minutes to an hour. So this first point here speaks to that stimulation and movement. Kids' brains need to be activated, their little bodies need to be energized, and they need to get that energy out. So if you're going to have meetings back to back, suggest that you get some time outside before then. If you can't go outside because you're near a public space or you're overwhelmed or that's too much time, then do some energy activities inside. Put on a 2-minute song that you both love, do a dance party around the kitchen, take tape and make a hopscotch on your floor, play hopscotch on the carpet, do the wiggle dance. There's plenty of things that you can do. You can play tag, put cushions on the floor and don't let them hit the lava, which is the carpet. Plenty of things that you can do without having to go to the Target and buy things or be up all night on Amazon. We're talking about using natural resources to make your child stimulated, get that energy out, and remind them that this is happening first because next you have an important meeting when it's going to have to be quiet time. Something we have talked a lot about is structure and how to make your life more structured. So, one thing that you want to think about is creating a play space. For children who have been under your hip for 6 months, the play space should not be in the basement if your office is on the third floor. And why do we know that? Is because the basement is now their most hated place in your home. They want to be right next to you. They love being attached to your hip. It really is flattery, even though it doesn't feel that way. So, what we need to do is create a space that's manageable for you so that you can work, but manageable for the child that you're in earshot or in the next room that they can get to you if they need you, but also that they can be independent and safe in that space. So, in terms of thinking about how to have them be independent when you're busy, we want to think about what can they actually do that they can do independently. Not every child is going to be able to play with Legos for 20 minutes. Some kids don't like Legos. So you have to really think about what your child likes, what occupies their attention, and do they have any safety risk or the ability to ask questions for, or do they need help? So you really want to think about the concept of what they can do alone, be safe while they're alone, and what do they actually enjoy enough to stay stimulated for the length of time that you need them to be. Okay, the other thing that's been coming up a lot is screen time. We've talked about the screen time babysitter. We all have one, we all need one. It's okay if you've been using one. What we want to make sure we do is use it very wisely. So it's not wise to have a child on screens all day. And we know this because they'll be overstimulated. They will drive you nuts when you're available to them. And it's also just not great for their bodies or for their brains. Having said that, we know you need to use it. It's okay to use it. Let's just make sure we're doing it in a really productive way. So, if your child is most occupied and safe on screens, save that for those meetings or those times that you're working where you really cannot be interrupted. Tell your child that there's a specific time of the day when they have access to those screens. Remind them why that's going to be that part of the day. It's not because you woke up in the morning and wanted to be mean, mommy, and not give the tablet in the morning. It's because it's our special time and I get to be with you all morning. And this is so fun. And I love that we're together dancing and folding laundry and walking around the house, taking a walk around the block. Your screens are for when mommy is so sad that she can't play with you when she's stuck in this meeting. So you're being really strategic about how you're phrasing it. You're upping your energy for the times that they don't have access to those screens so the child can start to feel the purpose of what you're doing with the way that you're structuring their day. Okay. So something you can think about, especially for our little clinger babies. So for the children that have really, really been under you in everything you've done, what you want to think about is creating a similar structure for them so that they can copy you, they can model you, they can feel really important, but they really are doing their own things. So something I might suggest is setting up a work desk for your child in the same place where you have your desk and having their work be their playing materials. So things you want to think about are toys that are quiet, art activities that don't cause a lot of chaos, things that can't crash down, because obviously the purpose is that you're actually getting work done when they're doing this. So you get really excited about this. You make this really important to them. I'm so proud of you for being able to play by yourself for 20 minutes while mom or dad are doing this, because you've been such a good listener and a good job focusing on your things. Now I'm going to give you this special work desk. You do your work while I do mine. And when we're done, we're going to get to be able to play together. In your efforts, you're going to use these pride skills. So you're going to think about what kind of labeled praises feel really relevant to what you're doing. If you need your child to be quiet and gentle and speaking with a soft voice, then during that special time before this time that you're having her play, you're going to be really focused on those labeled praises. Thanks for being gentle with the toys. Thanks for playing so quietly. I love that you're able to do this all on your own. You're so brave for being able to play with your toys alone, since normally you're used to mommy being able to play with you. So really amp up your labeled praises for the behavior that you want them to copy in that next segment of time when they're playing alone. We're also going to focus on the power of what we call the first then boards. This is a really simple intervention. If you Google it, you will find a board pre-made that you can print out. You can also just write first, then, and a line down the middle on a piece of plain white paper. And what you're going to do is either going to show a picture of the two activities or just write it down. So Again, this is not something that you need a laminator for. You don't need a therapist to do it for you. It's a simple thing that you can do on your own. And this is just an easy way to have the child remember the order of the things that are occurring. So we want to think about increasing motivation for when something is not easy for them. So these are little clinger babies. It's not easy for you to be on the phone for 20 minutes. So if the first on the first then board says, mommy work, Eloise work, and then says Daddy and Eloise get to play together, or it's a picture of two people playing together, you can remind the child that right now, Mommy and Daddy and Eloise have to work, and then we get to play together. So that way they can see it. They don't have to ask you 1,500 times what comes next, hoping that the 1,500th time they ask you, you will cave and say, just kidding, playtime is now. So it's a way to take yourself out of the equation. You put it down on paper. They can refer to it themselves. If you really want to up the ante for your older kids, maybe ages 3 and up, you could also use a visual timer. You probably won't be able to give them your phone, but the microwave, Alexa, if you have it, Google Voice, if you have it, and a little portable timer. You could set the time for the amount of minutes that you're in your meeting or on your call so they can see how much time is left without tugging on your leg or your arm and asking now, 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 now. So it helps create more independence, more structure, more consistency in teaching them that you've set them up for this. You've told them exactly the way it's going to go. There's no unfairness or injustice happening. You've let them know when you'll be available, and you will be available when you said that you are. Okay, so this is not easy and you might be feeling overwhelmed. So the key to just remember is one thing at a time. You can start on a Saturday of having 5 minutes of special time before breakfast, using label praises and breakfast for all the appropriate behaviors. You do not have to start on your most intense work day. You do not have to start on the first day of virtual schooling for your older kids when you know you're going to be swamped. So just remember that all this requires practice. You can do a little bit at a time, and you can start to amp up what you're doing the more experienced you feel and the more confident you feel in what you're doing. Okay, so this is a PCIT specific activity that we love to do. So this is called praising the positive opposite. So what you'll do is you'll make a list of the behaviors that are driving you nuts. And then you will try to think to yourself, what is the positive opposite of this behavior? AKA, this is what my child's been doing, and what do I really wish they were doing? So an easy example is a child that's been throwing toys. The opposite of throwing toys is holding them gently, being safe, being careful with their belongings, putting things back where they go, etc. What you're going to do if the behavior that's driving you nuts is throwing things is, instead of paying attention to the child when they're throwing the toys, you're going to pay more attention to when they're doing all the things well, being careful, being safe, putting things away, taking good care of their toys, listening to mom and dad, all these kinds of things that you can think of. It's helpful when you write them down. There's one less thing to remember. You could write them in big font and print them out and post them on the refrigerator, post them near your play space. If you're having your special playtime in a specific place, I would post them around there, put them on a Post-it note and put them on your desk or on your laptop, especially for the ones that happen when you're working, so that they're readily accessible to you and it's not like you're thinking on your feet. Let's think of some. These examples are good on here. They're not necessarily relevant to the independent play. So let's think a little bit about those. So when your child is doing something on their own, you might say things like, I love that you can explore all on your own. I love that you were brave and tried that by yourself. You can do hard things all on your own. Things like that. If your child has been interrupting you nonstop, you wait for the millisecond that they stop. Often it's not because they're going to stop bothering you. It's just because they need to take a little breath. And during that little breath, you say, thanks for waiting for mom to get off the phone. Thank you for waiting for dad to finish what he was saying. Things like that. So you're going to pay more attention to the pause or the break than you are going to pay attention to the thing that's driving you nuts, which is your child on your leg screaming and begging for you to get off the phone. Another thing to think about is if they're doing a learning activity. So if you have a little workbook, if you have a kindergarten activity, if you have them drawing their alphabet with paint, whatever you've decided to do to make it a learning activity, you could focus your labeled praises on. You have great ideas. Your learning is such a superpower. Thanks for focusing. And you're going to especially use those the most when your child is giving you pushback about not wanting to do those learning activities. So if that's when the whining increases because you've turned off the screen and it's time for them to learn, you're going to focus as much as you can on the positive behaviors. Your child's going to stop whining as much because they're going to realize that the positive attention is so much more worth it. Okay. So this is the rubber band versus brick wall parenting. So what we like you to remember is if you are having trouble being consistent, if you are giving empty threats, if you are making empty promises, kids realize that they can push you around. So they want to hold you to your word, but they want to give you a push if they don't like what your word was. So if you have let them know that they're going to be punished at the end of the day, and then they're good all day, and so you don't stick with the consequence that you've decided on, that is one way they're going to treat you like a rubber band. So they're going to push you, bend you, snap you if their behavior is really bad. So if they have learned that by crawling on you and screaming in your other ear, that's free when you're on the phone, means that dad gets off his work call to put the child in timeout, they will scream and climb faster tomorrow because they've gotten exactly what they set out to get. So this concept is more about finding anything that works for you and sticking to it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be timeouts or discipline. This is speaking more to being as consistent as possible, giving positive attention the most you can, limiting your negative attention, and really sticking to your word that you would do what you said you would do, whether that is taking something away because they behaved poorly or giving them special time because you told them they would. So rather than being a rubber band that can be pushed, bent, snapped, we want you to be a brick wall. We want you to be steadfast, consistent, structured. Kids try to climb over you, under you, through you, around you. Nothing works because you're a brick wall and you stay exactly the way that you are. Kids will start to respect you more. They're going to respect your boundaries more, your rules, and they're also just going to look forward to spending more time with you because they're going to take everything you say the first time that you said it to be true. All right, now we are at closing thoughts and questions. Do we have any questions?
We do. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Okay, so we have a couple questions, and if people have them and want to type them in the chat, we will ask them, and Lauren will give her expert insight. So first question, how do you explain needing to work to a toddler?
Good question. Okay, so toddlers understand things much more simply than older children do. So I think that every child is different for what you're going to say, but I also think it's okay to point out all the opportunities of what work is. So if you consider vacuuming work because it's a time that you as an adult need to do something that your child can't help with, you could start pointing things out. This is work. That's work. If laundry is work because your child is not allowed to help you fold, then that's really considered work. So I think that defining what it looks like, pointing it out as much as possible, what would fall under the same thing. So if it means that you are stepping away from your child and you need quiet, you'd be labeling that as many times as you need to, that something similar so that they start to understand. You could also call it something different. So it could be like mom or dad's quiet time or busy time. You could point out all the times that they have quiet time and busy time and just make those associations. But for toddlers, the most effective thing is to associate other things rather than explain this kind of construct that they wouldn't be able to understand because they haven't gone to an office yet.
That is a very good point. All right, our next question. How can parents make the most of after work play? Like, how do you feel that kids play bucket the most effectively? Would you say special time?
My go-to answer is special time, especially because it's only 5 minutes of your time as opposed to an hour playing with loud trains when you came home with a migraine. So I think 5 minutes of special time is a great expectation to set for yourself. so that you are able to do it and you're able to do it consistently. 5 minutes is also hard work when you're working on using these pride skills and you're working on not asking questions or giving commands or making anything teachable. And then if you want to keep playing, then you say, our special time is up, but dad or mom has more time today, so I'm able to keep playing. Another thing that I think we overlook sometimes is if you're exhausted from work, but you know that your child needs you, do something that you need to. Like, remember
Mhm.
that you don't like certain toys. Remember that certain activities really push your buttons, or you know that your child is going to tantrum when it's put away. Don't do those activities. Only do what you can really handle. So if a walk outside makes you feel better after a work day, then make that walk with your child the most fun it could possibly be. Play I Spy while you're walking. Skip one block and walk the next one. Find every bird you can find. Create little tasks for them that make it seem extra special, but you're really getting what you need out of the walk too. So I think that that's really important to think about where your limits are in terms of playing and your energy.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I definitely will do that with my daughter tonight
Mhm.
because we had a day yesterday. Okay, and then it looks like our last question. Again, if anybody has any others, you can pop them in the chat. You might have already hit this, but what are some of your favorite ways to help keep a kid occupied while working? Like, are there any go-to, sort of like you just gave some good examples about what to do on a walk? Are there any like ideal ones that like, oh, this is one I recommend for parents a lot?
Sure. So I think that the biggest rules to think of are things that aren't messy, aren't safe, can't be eaten, and things that aren't noisy. So depends on the age of your child, but I think Play-Doh and kinetic sand and things like that, as long as your child is old enough to not eat them, I think that that's an activity that can go on for a long time without needing a lot of support. For your younger kiddos, something you could think about is creating little play stations. So let's say that they have three types of toys that they enjoy, putting three boxes on the floor in different parts of the room so that they can start going around and exploring and also getting that motor movement in between, which is very similar to what preschools do and they call centers is their activity. So it's really creating your own little play stations. I think the biggest thing isn't necessarily the toy, but what can the child do with the toy? So you want to think about what sparks their imagination, what can keep their sustained interest. A light up caterpillar is probably only going to be cool the first 4 times it lights up. And there's not really much else that can be done with it. But a box of figurines that they can make pretend play out of and create all these different families with, that would probably keep them occupied a lot longer.
Love that. Yeah, definitely. The cool light up toys are really, at least for my daughter, short attention span. They're nice,
Mm-hmm.
but she would rather play with the box all day. All
Sure.
right. Yeah. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
just going to add on just to add on one more thing. I think an easy way to think about that is, does this toy educate or does this toy entertain? If the answer is entertain, it's probably not a great toy for when your child needs to be occupied for a longer time. If it educates, meaning that it can teach them something, it can create pretend play, it can use their imagination, they can use their hands, there's a sensory aspect to it, those are probably the ones that will occupy them for longer.
Oh, love that. That's awesome. All right. Well, I think that we hit all the questions. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. Do you have any final thoughts, Lauren, or are you all good?
I just think that everyone is doing the best they can and to keep up what you're doing. If there's anything you're going to add in, I would focus on those labeled praises and just some consistency. So just remember the fact that you can structure their time creates a lot of consistency for them. It reduces a lot of need for attention and questions. And it's a great place to start if you're feeling so overwhelmed that you only need one thing to start with. It's labeled praises and some structure. But you're doing a great job. Your child is not the only one who has maybe experienced some regression or maybe become more obsessed with you than you ever thought they would. Remember, at the end of the day, it's flattering and it's a huge compliment that you are their favorite person in the world and they just really want to be with you that much.
that is a good reframe. As a mom of a toddler, I can definitely say there are those days where I'm like, oh my goodness. So,
Sure, as everyone does.
I know. I'm so appreciative of you spending the time with us today. We are so thankful. Everybody, we will link the deck that we shared in the comments. And if you have any questions, you can email us. I'll put my email in the chat. So thanks, everybody, and have a good rest of your Thursday.
Thanks, everybody.